Hello, scientists. Today we have a science exploration. We are going to compare objects, how they look like when they're wet compared to how they look like when they're dry. All right, so I have a couple objects in front of me. I want to share what I have. I have a material called organza or organza. So that's this shiny material. I have some paper plates, cardboard, paper towels, and wood, basswood. All right. So I'm going to bring the camera closer so you can see what I'm going to do. I have this cup of water with a dropper, and I'm going to drop water on each of the objects. One object will be wet, and the other object will be dry, so we can compare. I do have a sponge to wipe up any spills I may make. All right, let's get started. So I'm going to just push away some of these objects, and this is the first object we're going to observe. I'm going to put water on this piece of organza, and then this one I'm going to leave alone, no water on it, so that we can compare. So the water is seeping in. I see some of it resting on the top, but it looks like it's traveling through the fabric. I don't know if you can see it. I will bring the camera closer so you can take a really good look at what's happening. So this one's wet and this one's dry. What do you notice? Do you notice a difference in how the fabrics look? Do they look the same? All right, well, I noticed a difference. I noticed that this fabric, when it's wet, it looks darker than when it's dry. I also noticed something else. This has a shininess to it, but when it's wet, I don't really see that shininess as much. All right, let's try this with some other objects that I have here today. So I'm going to move these aside, dry my workspace here, make sure it's really dry. Okay, so here's the paper plates. I'm going to put water on this paper plate. I'm going to leave this one dry. Do you think there will be a change when the paper plate is wet compared to when it's dry? I'm just going to move the water around a little bit. It's kind of resting on the top of the paper plate. So when I move it around, it doesn't take as much time to absorb or soak into the paper plate. All right, there's water on the plate. I'm just going to pour out whatever's resting on top so we can observe what it looks like when they're wet and dry. I'm going to hold it up so you can get a closer look. Do you notice a difference? Does it look the same? Does it look different? If it does look different, what's different about it? All right, I'm going to share what I'm noticing. I'm noticing that the paper plate that is wet, it's forming these little bumps on the paper plate. And this paper plate here on the surface here, it's flat. It's not bumpy. I notice also where the wet spots are on this paper plate that it looks a little bit more gray. I see gray spots on the plate where this just looks like a white paper plate. Okay, so those are some of the observations I noticed comparing the paper plates when they're wet and dry. I have some cardboard, and I'm going to drop some water. And just like the paper plate, the water kind of rests on top, takes a little bit for it to soak in. So I'm just going to move it around and kind of speed up the process. All right, I'm going to shake off whatever remaining water is resting on this sheet of cardboard. When I hold up the cardboard, do you notice a difference between the cardboard that's wet compared to the cardboard that's dry? Or do they look exactly the same? All right, if you did notice a difference compared to the cardboard that's wet, or the wet spot on this cardboard compared to this dry piece of cardboard, what's the difference? I'm going to share what I noticed. So I noticed that this has a very medium bright kind of brown on the wet spot where the cardboard is, and then this is more of like a dull brown. So that's my comparison, what I noticed. Next, we're going to try the paper towels. So I'm going to get wet one sheet of paper towel and leave this one dry. Do you notice a difference, or does it look the same? If you do notice a difference, explain. What do you notice? What do you see? All right, the paper towel that is wet, I notice that it looks a little bit more gray on that wet spot, and this one's white. I also notice, like, I can see the lines on my table here through this. It's a bit see-through. Do you see my fingers? I'll move it up closer. Do you see like the shadow of my fingers behind this paper towel? How about now? You might see some shadow. This seems to be more see-through than the other one. All right, and last but not least, I have the basswood. Let's see. So I'm going to wet the basswood, put a little more water. And just like the paper plate and the cardboard, it's not seeping in as quick as it did with like the paper towel. The water seeped in really quickly. And like with the organza, it took some time with the organza. Not as quick as the paper towel, but this is taking time to seep in. I'm just going to move it around a little bit. Let me spread out that water just to speed up the process. It does soak in the wood. Do you notice a difference? I'll hold up the wet wood side by side with the dry sample of wood. Okay. Do they look the same? Do they look different? If they do look different, what is different? What do you notice that's different about them? All right, what I'm noticing is that the wet sample of wood looks like it's like a medium tan color. It looks like the color got darker compared to the dry wood. Okay, kindergarten scientists, that was a fun exploration. I hope you enjoyed it. I learned so much through this exploration. I noticed and I learned that when comparing objects, when they're wet and dry, the wet ones seem to look darker. And then I noticed I made some other comparisons, like the paper towel. Like, I wasn't expecting that at all. The paper towel was see-through. How cool was that? It looked even more see-through when I put water on it. Well, I hope you enjoyed this exploration. Have a great day.